Well, first, thank you so much for being available like
pleasure.
that and doing those sessions. And it's really nourishing for me to have you every Sunday.
Pleasure.
It's just for the the funny story. A few years, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago, I discovered non-duality. A friend gave me I am that from Maharaj.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I fell into that, and it resonated so hard. You tell me if sometimes you don't understand, because I lost a little bit my English. So
No, I do understand. It's very clear. Yeah.
And at that time, I was a little bit like I ate the book,
Yeah.
and there was something that like I couldn't understand with my intellect, but there was something inside. I was like, okay, this is it. Thank you, and I will stop going for all those vinyasa training and all those things like into the yoga thing, because that's not what I'm craving for. But at that time I thought that all like there was no enlightened people alive.
Yeah.
I was just okay. Well, I will just have to sort this out by myself on the book anyway. So thank you very much for being alive.
That's very sweet. And that's such an intense book, first non-duality book to be given, I Am That. It's really beautiful, but really intense.
It's very intense, and I should say that it triggered me a lot, because I was at that time training to be a yoga teacher, and I fell into this, let's say, trap of going very ascetic, because I have like a personality structure that is very not self-confident. There's a lot of lack of love for myself, so I was like, okay, I'm not, I have to be like this and like that, and to be enlightened, I have to be like this, like that, and I really became really like, how do you call that? A little bit like fascist with myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And I met a teacher this at the beginning of this year, and I started to do like a private session with her, and it really helped me, and it's going very fast. And
nice.
And now I discovered you, and it's also going very fast with your all your sharings, and it's really beautiful. And I wanted to share about this this doing energy, or this I don't know if it's the same as seeking, but I can feel myself all the time. Well, first maybe I should say that I had a strong experiment or experience of state of consciousness after a retreat. Well, during the retreat, and it lasted for a week. It was like a big expansion, and I spent the week after the retreat like doing a lot of things, but I didn't feel that I was doing anything. That it was just being done. And I had some blissful days like this before, but not like this for a week. And my memory, like my short-term memory, was a little bit weird. Like sometimes I was like, oh, I'm here and I'm doing that. That's beautiful. Just like, anyway. And so now that like I feel back again into something more contracted, I can see that it's all about doing, and there is always a doer. And even if I want to stop doing something, like getting into the presence, which I call meditate, but just like sitting and just feeling myself being, or feeling the space and feeling the moment, it's still an action. So in French we say the snake biting its tail. Like going around, you know. And so I don't know if you can comment on that, because even if I can't ask you what can I do, because you're still doing
How can I fix that? Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is, I mean, this is what the machine, the human body is set up to do, is to fix problems. Like, so we're these creative animals that can use our thinking mind to improve our survival. The problem is that when there's identification with that, then it becomes exaggerated, just like everything becomes exaggerated. So when there's identification and the belief that that is who you are, then it becomes ultra important that you do because you've got to stay alive. And then it becomes ultra important that you you produce things. You produce a self-image. You produce a practice that's going to lead you to something. And that's most probably the most important part, is that leading you to something, because you disappear without something for you to get to. Like, you is always in time, and the way that the you in time appears is by what you've done and what you're going to do and who you're going to be. And that's like the biggest attachment. It doesn't mean that there isn't planning that happens, but there is nothing better than what's actually happening. This idea that tomorrow is going to bring you more freedom, this idea that the next moment is going to be better than this moment, is the lie. So when you had that awakening, there was a deep knowing of that, I'm sure. Like, that freedom took over, and in those moments you didn't want to be somewhere else. You didn't need the time to hurry up. Like, doing happened, so doing your everyday life happened, producing things happened, but you didn't need the moment to fast forward. You didn't need to live for something in the future. You were just doing it. And that's the difference.
Exactly. It's fascinating because it's like I can see that there is this entity putting a layer on top of reality. That's what now. Like, last week I realized that memory was covering everything, that now I was back into, like, I was seeing and interacting with the world from memory. So I know everything and I comment on everything from memory. And now, like, that's what I realized yesterday or this morning. I was like, but actually there is also this layer of, it's like I'm covering reality with the eye. It's something like this.
Yeah. And really what's happening right now is not knowing. Like, right now in this moment, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want, you don't know where you are, you don't know anything. There is just presence happening. And then the thinking mind comes in and out telling you stories about what's happening. And when you've lived your whole life identified with the thinking mind, like, unpeeling that can be very scary, because if you take away all your knowing in time, or your memories, your ideas about the future, then where are you? And that's very scary, to not be anything on the human level. But this is like, the body comes with an ego, so the body comes with a character, a way of being. But it's this disidentification from that isn't who you are. The person that wants to do something, wants to become something, isn't you. You are this presence that's beyond that, that's right here, right now, and it's not a thing, and it's all things.
It's going so fast, because now that I'm completely back into, I would say, normal state or contracted state, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I know that I experimented something different from the reality of now. I mean, but yet I can only remember it, but I'm not living it now, and that's crazy. And even at that time, when this experience happened, I was terrified. I was looking into the eyes of my teacher. I was sitting in front of her, and it was like she was handing like a cosmic Big Bang to me, and inside it was like a huge panic. Like, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to go into this because I will disappear.
Yeah, totally.
So and it's still deep something, but
yeah, and the biggest fear of the person is that I'll disappear and I won't be able to survive anymore. Like that's what it really fears. Because in a way we invented this ego, like this identity in time, to help us survive better. So obviously the opposite to that is that we'll survive worse, or this is an unconscious presumption, because like the time has enabled us to stop dangers, to do really complex things for our survival. So like to drop into the moment, it like activates this fear that you're going to die, that you're not going to be able to survive, which might make you function less well in society. Like so, but it also might make you function better in a way, because you'll have less stress and you'll be more in flow. But it also might make your memory worse and like make you care less about doing certain things, so you like maybe more risky in doing things. Who knows though? But it basically activates this deep fear that you're going to die, and that there'll be terrible consequences for you, like if you're not in control, if you're not running the ship. And it's so obvious that would happen, because the thinking mind, the ability to think and use time, has really made survival very strong for most of humans. So it's really elevated survival. And it's taken out a lot of diseases. It's made our life the average life lasts a lot longer. So, but it's
okay. So we say again.
It's made the average life last a lot longer. I don't know if I'm saying that quite correctly, but I mean, like, so now we live till, like, I think women, it's like on average live till 78, whereas 200 or 300 years ago it might have been like 50 or 60, the average life expectancy, that's the word. And so in our information that we know on the human level, we know that the thinking mind and identification has improved survival. It worked. Having an identity and believing this was really real made humans work really hard and really secure survival. And in some part of your body, you know this. There's a deep knowing of this.
But it's a little bit crazy. Is it real, or is it just part of the ego structure? Or
it's part of the ego structure, and it creates suffering. And ultimately, like, real and unreal, like, that begins to, like, nothing's really happened, but apparently in the story it's happened. And in that story, the ego has made us survive really well. The identification with the ego has made us survive really well. But it's created suffering, a lot of suffering.
Yeah, it's actually it's actually making us a little bit crazy. I mean, us as a humanity, and because I see animals, like I live with a dog, and
yeah, but dogs are very vicious if you watch them in their natural habitat. Like I used to live in Thailand, and I've got a Thai dog, and they're genetically not domesticated, so that means that they are not selectively bred to be passive, and they were fierce. Like the dog that, like, I often saw dog fights and I learned that when dogs fight seriously, like, blood goes everywhere. There's two types of fighting. There's like fake fight, where they're just kind of playing each other, like trying to dominate the other, and then there's like proper fighting, where their blood like goes everywhere, it sprays around everywhere, and they properly fight. It's really vicious. But like the dog where I lived, he liked my dog Khaleesi, she's a Thai dog, but another dog that came onto the property, he just snapped its neck and killed it instantly, like it came on the property. Like, so but they don't suffer because they don't identify with being that. So that dog doesn't identify with being a murderer, and the one that's killed doesn't identify with being a victim. So, like, what we've done through becoming self-aware is we're trying to make ourselves more compassionate mammals, and we're trying to be more peaceful mammals. But yeah, it gets all confused because we've gone through this big period of like this loads of seeking energy, that's really rapidly changed us.
Mm.
So it's like what we come from, mammals, is quite vicious. Like imagine if you suddenly gave dog self-awareness and all the powers that humans have. Like Khaleesi, if I imagine my dog, like what she'd do is she'd just try and get all the food for herself and then sit on it and not share it with anyone else. Like she wouldn't share. She'd be like, mine, mine, mine. And if she could have like nuclear weapons to protect that, I'm sure she would, because she wouldn't really understand what she was doing. Like, so we're trying to evolve past that, and it's been like a massive process. Like we've come from mammals, like this, and then we're becoming self-conscious, and we're evolving, and it's really magical and spectacular. And I presume now that we've got really good at surviving and we're creating AI, so our life is becoming a lot easier. Hopefully now.
What is IAI?
Sorry, AI, like we're creating artificial intelligence. So we're creating like robots that can maybe make our life a lot easier. That might not be what happens. And our survival a lot easier. And then hopefully what can begin to happen is we begin to then look to our happiness and to being more balanced. And then this seeking energy and this identification can be really questioned and maybe disappear in society. But maybe we had to become, like on the human level, we had to become more steady in our survival before we could get to that point of becoming a more peaceful society. Ramesh always used to say that you couldn't begin to explore this subject until you had your basic needs met, really. Like if you hadn't got your basic needs met, if you're starving, then you would, you'd be so focused on getting food that you wouldn't begin to question what happiness is or the nature of reality. And so maybe that's true of our society. Like we have to become a more peaceful society, like so people are getting fed and people aren't starving, and then we can begin to question happiness and the nature of reality. And it's beginning to happen, like so Western countries where there is more stability. I think that this subject's growing rapidly because then people begin to question what is happiness when they've got all those things met. But I don't know in the end. Like this is all theory, and then who knows in the end. Like this moment is so mindless.
Yes. It's like it's so good to hear and to speak about this, and at the same time sometimes when I just move back and I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah.
and it's like the mind is I don't know the word in English, disjoncté, like an electric board, and sometimes the electricity goes off.
Yeah.
And sometimes in my mind it does, like it's almost like this. It's just like almost crashing because it's
yeah. What is that called in English? It's like a surge of power goes through, and it I forget that word in English now. But yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's also mindless. Like right here, right now, it's totally mindless.
Yes, and it's beautiful because most of the time it's a little bit more difficult for me through Skype but when I'm in presence of I only met the teacher that I have right now in person, but the mind goes up, meaning that I, like all the questions they arise, and then they cannot go through my mouth, or if they go through my mouth, I can feel that the energy is going, let's say, from my pelvic area up to the head, and then the mind is going on, and then up the question goes, but most of the time I already have the answer.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. It's just the human. I mean, I'm completely fascinated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to start to study again in September, going back to university, and I'm 35, and I'm going to study psychology.
Oh, nice.
Just to, I mean, this questioning that, this talking and following your teachings and my teacher teachings, that will be my, let's say, my main thing. It's the environment I'm in anyway, like I cannot close the door, but it's also interesting to go into more human or
and I think it's amazing to have more people that are into non-duality also being psychologists as well. Like, I don't know if that's your destination to become a psychologist, but I also think that combination is really beautiful. So you can work with the person until they become more balanced in their life, and then begin to bring in this subject.
Exactly, because I teach, well, I teach yoga. I guide, let's say, postural physical session. Well, it's not that physical. They could sleep during the whole session, but that's what I do. And during the confinement, the lockdown, let's say, I had 2 calls from 2 persons, and they really, really needed help. Like, the mind was really, really too much active. They couldn't sleep, and they had really, really bad situations. And I only had, I guess, like non-dual words, and I knew that I couldn't talk to them about that. It was not possible. And so I was like, sorry, I can show you how to breathe and how, like, and then I was like, okay, maybe I should study psychology, so I have the vocabulary, and I have because it's hard sometimes just to use those words.
Anyway. On my website, there is on the reference page, there is a book by a psychologist who talks about the psychology of chakras. Maybe you've read all that and you know it, but I just thought it was really beautiful book. So, and she's also, I think,
I saw them, and I will order them. Actually, it's on my list of books.
That one is a really good one. The psychology of chakras. It's by the lady. Both of them are really nice. I think I've got 2 books on there, but the one by the lady, I think you might like. But nice, lovely to speak with you, Pauline, and thank you so much for being very patient when we were trying to work out how to get it to work, to get Skype audio to work.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for calling me back.
Yeah, nice. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice.